Hey, what's up, investors? My name is Devin Moreno, and I'm an investor here in the Baltimore City area, DC area, and such. And I wanted to go ahead and talk about three more psychological or life principles, I guess you can say, that I personally think has helped lead to a lot of the success I've had. I am not like some multi-millionaire investors, so I can't claim to be that. So, take what you will from this. Maybe it's just a discussion, maybe something to be had. But if you find yourself in a position where you're kind of looking to at least get to where I'm at, through the struggles I've had, knowing nothing about real estate, coming from really not any background of entrepreneurship whatsoever, then maybe these principles can help you. And there's, in my opinion, a reason a lot of videos go into psychological concepts because it's actually incredibly important. In fact, most new investors will likely fail at entrepreneurship, and it's mostly due to mindset principles that have not been adopted. And I even think that there's mindsets and limiting beliefs that I have that are stopping me from going to the next step. So I figure, hey, for anyone who's not where I'm at, I'll impart this onto you while I then learn the next steps from somebody else. So let's go into it. Just three principles that I thought were important, at least for my beginning journey in real estate investing. So the first concept I'm going to call everything is your fault and not your fault. So what's going to happen is you're going to go and deal with humans, all right? Interact with tenants, contractors, and various other different elements of real estate investing. It is a human-based industry. You can't get around that. And a lot of entrepreneurship is human-based industry, selling and buying stuff. And so you have to understand how people work. And a lot of times you're going to run into these situations, most specifically with tenants and contractors. That's usually where most new investors start falling apart. You're going to start running into these situations where the contractor or the tenant may do something and it might be totally their fault. They may have caused the situation, caused all the issues, but they're never going to really accept that fault. They're usually going to blame outside sources. Now, this is a very normal human concept. It's very fundamental. Your brain, actually, everyone's brain, mine too, whatever, is pretty much hardwired to try to reduce fault to itself. Try not to see yourself as a bad person. This is the reason a lot of people can justify some pretty heinous acts and such, because their mind is actively working to justify that. Now, what's important here is to figure out how to handle that, because you could just argue with the contractor and argue with the tenant, and then that would just lead to a road where a tenant one day says, screw you, I'm just going to stop paying or whatever, start breaking the rules, and they start retaliating on you, and they're in your house. They have a lot more power than you do in this state in a lot of cases, until you actually kick them out. And then, or contractors, where they can unfortunately be the lifeblood of whether or not your deal is a good deal or not, and how you work with them is going to be super critical. So a lot of times when I deal with a situation of, the contractor or the tenant messed up, and that may or may not even be true. Maybe, it's you and this rationale is coming into place, but let's just say they messed up. I often try to think to myself, okay, what could I have done better to either communicate this better, or to get the right expectations ahead of time, or to have done something to preemptively stop this thing from occurring? Every single time you can try to take a situation that you don't think is your fault and instead blame it on yourself. Because if it is your fault, then that means you have control over it. It means you can do something about it. If it wasn't your fault, then there's nothing you could do. That's it. You're just a victim of life circumstances. We move on because, nothing you can do about it. Oh well. Pick someone else, I guess. But if we can learn to blame it on ourselves, then we can take that situation and evolve from it. In the situation with the tenant, say they break something because they just did something dumb. Well, could you have, before they came into the house, gone over a list of things of, hey, this is, if you do it this way, this will break or whatnot. Yes, if you throw a turkey in the garbage disposal, unfortunately, it probably will stop working. These little things, obviously probably not that condescending in nature, but these things you can probably hedge against. And also just understanding other people's place in life, where they are, not like place in society, but where they are is the stepping stones of their life. Sometimes they may not know something that is just simply obvious to you. So with that, you're going to have to stop, step back, take a moment, and just be like, all right, How can we prevent this in the future? Understanding that not everyone else had the same upbringing as you, not everyone else thinks the same way that you do, and so therefore they're probably not going to interpret what you would have considered common sense as common sense. And so a lot of times I have found that this has gotten me through dozens of situations where there's a really tense moment that's been reduced to not being a tense because the contractor or the tenant does not feel I'm about to blame it on them. Now, the second concept I think is important to learn in this whole real estate process is, or entrepreneurship in general, is if you want to be just like your parents, then listen to them. And this can almost be reinterpreted to say, stop listening to your parents. And so that's one thing that got me hemmed up quite a bit. Your parents and your family and all of that are probably going to be your biggest critics of your investing and entrepreneurship journey. You have heard that dozens of times, probably on other channels and such. Certainly was the case for my own. And, you know, the reasons are fairly obvious. It is much easier to reject what you're doing and to caution against it, especially since they have not done it, and also because the chances of failure are so high. Most businesses do in fact fail, so therefore you should not do it. Of course, this is a whole game and challenge of perseverance. They may not understand that of course you're going to fail, that of course, yes, the intent is to fail enough times until you succeed and then become an overnight success. But basically, you know, that's hard for a lot of people not doing this to grasp. That's not really what they want to do. And so that's part one of that. And part two, I would say, is a lot of people are going to have opinions about the best way to do it. But trust me, if they have never done it before, if they are not actively an entrepreneur, if they do not run a real estate business, or if they are not actively doing this thing, then you probably should stop listening to them. And oftentimes I just rephrase this advice to, if you want to be just like your parents, literally exactly who they are, then listen to them. Their life and where they are at in life right now is a result of their decisions throughout their life. So if you analyze and look at your parents and you figure out, hey, is this the person that I want to be? Then do literally everything they did. That's going to land you right where they are at. It's really that simple. So, you know, sure, we can talk about opportunities and, you know, other things that may have occurred in their life that could have held them down and whatnot. But I often like to then point to other entrepreneurs in life who also had a lot of those similar variables. We can talk about kids. So many entrepreneurs have kids. So many entrepreneurs have been taking care of sick relatives. So many entrepreneurs did this without money. So many entrepreneurs did this, you know, with the weight of the world weighting down on them. There are many entrepreneurs that are so much more successful than me who have so many more limitations than me. It actually frustrates the hell out of me. Makes me feel like I'm not accomplishing much. But, you know, and sure, yes, I've accomplished a lot, you know, owning 17 properties in the 4 years that I'm doing this, but that's something just to take into account, is that, you know, sometimes your parents are going to give you advice that isn't so good, and you're probably going to have to reach outside of that and try to figure out what is actually best for you. And generally, you're going to be seeking an entrepreneur or someone else doing it to find that out. Now, the third concept I think is important for at least starting off is when you are trying to go through this entrepreneurial journey, you're going to try to figure out ways to free up your time, all right? To automate processes, make things easier for you to free up your time. But this is where you as an entrepreneur and you as an employee are going to come into drastically different outcomes of that. When an employee learns how to automate something, generally, not all of them, but generally, they take that free time and then do what they want with it. Watch TV, whatever. If you manage to get done something faster, you don't then generally pick up more work. You're not like, hey, boss, I finished this early, give me some more stuff. I mean, unless you're like looking for a promotion or something of that nature, you generally are trying to create free time to slack off the rest of the time. When I say slack off, that could mean anything. I mean, maybe you would spend it learning real estate, but whatever. But you're not actually trying to do the job that you're trying to do, generally. Entrepreneurs have to do the exact opposite, and this is kind of a hard thing to wrap your mind around, is when every time you create free time, you then fill up the free time with more work. You are actively trying to create more work, because by leveraging your time, okay, off to either automation or other people doing a task, you then can make the business work as hard as 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and then that's what helps the business accelerate. You leveraging other people's time or other automation processes is what helps the business grow and succeed. And if you do what employees do, Well, then let's say you leverage out 100% of the work and someone else is doing 100% of it, and now you do nothing of it. Well, your business now no longer is moving forward at all. And so, or not much more than when you were just doing it. So what you're going to find is that you're actually working harder just to work harder. And so you keep like finding ways to remove your work so that way you can work more. And it's kind of this crazy idea, and that's why entrepreneurship really isn't for everyone, because it's hard. It's extremely difficult. It's far more easy to be an employee whom is just a cog in a wheel. The reason you can make so much as an employee is because the entire machine around you, the entire employees, all the employees working together create a revenue stream that can allow you all to be paid more. In fact, most times, and this is just a side note, when you become an entrepreneur and a sole business owner, oftentimes you are making less than what your job paid you, strictly because now you're no longer as efficient as the machine you were once just a single part of. And so, hence, you can't pay yourself as much. And so, but anyway, that I digress. I'm going to just say, yes, absolutely expect that you're going to be working a lot harder as an entrepreneur. Of course, many of you probably knew that, but I like to throw that one in there because most of us come from the mindset of employees, and we often want a break, we often want a vacation, and you're going to find that every time you do that to yourself, you are making things worse. It's kind of weird. It's like I'm almost endorsing saying, hey, don't have a life. Not really what I'm saying, but I'm just saying you're going to definitely have a lot less of a life than when you were an employee. Well, anyway, that is my 3 psychological or whatever sort of concepts that I think that you should know before you hit this whole entrepreneurial route. But it's just a discussion, right? So if you disagree with me or agree with me, comment below, let me know, and hopefully I talk to you all very soon.